Hi, I'm Major Cortez. I am a former Army Ranger. I have a training company called Onkai Grove, and the one of the things that I've been saying for the company, and it's like been like the little motto is experience matters, right? And experience matters because it does matter, but it's not everything. That's why I didn't say, "Hey, experience is everything." Experience matters, and I have a lot of experience fighting in Iraq, fighting in Afghanistan, but I also have a lot of experience on the streets. I there's been podcasts where I talk about my past, but I never go really that much into detail. But as a former gang member, there is a lot of things that I did or I saw or I was around, that when I look at these courses that are like these street operator or urban low vis, and it's like a former law enforcement guy who's teaching it, and I have family and friends who are law enforcement, and if you hear them, talk about a lot of this stuff that they learned, is they learned it on the streets, right? This is not stuff they learned in the academy. It's stuff that, some of them will even admit, you know what, I saw a bad guy do it and I learned from that. And then now I know that's a possibility. Um, so Iraq and Afghanistan was not the first time I got shot at. It was not the first time I experienced the type of violence where they're trying to take my life. I was stabbed when I was 15. I was shot at, multiple times, and actually I was almost stabbed at the second time. Um, and all this experience matters now because like pulling IEDs out of the road does not really benefit the civilian world right now or civilians, right? I was teaching for the last 5 years, and I never really talked about that past, but there's a lot of stuff that does matter now. Um, and I was going to school to be a registered dietitian, and I thought that's what I wanted to do as a profession. But I started teaching civilians and law enforcement, some of the things that I've been through, and that gave me a much bigger sense of purpose than trying to tell somebody, "Hey, eat healthy, eat a salad." Chances are high they're not going to listen to me. But if I can do something, you know, teach somebody something that I saw, or, that I learned from my experience that can help them to be a prepared father, mother, or a SWAT guy, then I get a bigger sense, of fulfillment doing that. And today we're doing a lot of vehicle training because we're in and around vehicles a lot. And there's some things that I learned, like for example, skipping rounds right here. We're skipping some rounds, and we have a target right here. We put a piece of paper target, and we were hitting it, but I never even shot at the target. I just shot in the general area, and the rounds would hit. Um, and I saw that firsthand in Afghanistan. And, one of the guys got shot in the shoulder, and it wasn't a direct hit. It just skipped off, and that skipped off an armored vehicle, yes, but you can do that here as well on a vehicle that's not armored, right? You can, and the other vehicle over there, we shot through the door. For the people who've seen the movie End of Watch, there's a scene where the cop is talking to one of the gang members, and he already has his pistol through pointing at the door. I've done ride-alongs with a bunch of agencies. I get asked to come out, and I saw that firsthand in some of these rough areas, where cops have to be that alert that whoever they're talking to, they already look like maybe they're on drugs, their faces are tattooed and whatnot, and they do that too, right? So being prepared does mean, hey, go out and train in and stuff like that, but who you train with matters, right? And experience matters. And if I can help people, that makes me feel good. And as a former gang member, I've now spoken to so many, teenagers and even adults. And I told them, like, how did I get out? How do I step away from that world when it is my world? When I feel like if I were to leave, I would be called a coward, and really not a coward, you'd be called a bitch or a pussy. And that's all you know. And can I do anything with my life outside of it? And at this point, I've gotten thousands of messages from people saying like, "Hey man, seeing you make it out gives me hope." which is why if you go in my bio, it says former gang member turned Army Ranger, now community leader, entrepreneur, and kidney donor, right? And I know some companies don't want to work with me because it says former gang member, right? I'm not your typical special operations guy out there. First of all, I'm brown, I'm 5'6" on a good day, and I don't have a squeaky clean background. But the whole world isn't squeaky clean. The whole world doesn't look like Thor or Superman. So I learned it firsthand. If you see somebody do something, that kind of gives you hope, because you know what? If they can do it, I can do it. I remember being active duty, and my coach said, "Hey, you should start fighting." And I remember like, "No, I'm an active duty ranger. I'm not sure if there's time." And then my coach named all these guys who were former military or current military, and they were fighting. And I'm like, you know what? If they can do it, I can do it. So that's why I'm out here, still staying current with my skills, because the Ranger Creed wasn't just something I said a long time ago and then now I'm out and I don't live that way or anything like that. No, I am trying to be the best protector, the best individual, and still serve my community, not overseas, but here stateside. And how can I do that? Well, teaching people, from my past experiences, and guiding the youth, because I went back to where I grew up, and there's still a lot of trouble there, right? And how do you make a bad area good? Well, you need less bad people, and if I can help some of this youth that's troubled, that's misguided, then that's what I'm gonna do. So to wrap things up, if you know somebody who is like, hey, you know what? This dude's a knucklehead. He's not gonna listen to me because he thinks I'm a square. Point them my direction, because I bet I don't know them, I don't know their experiences, but we have similar experiences, and I'm pretty sure they connect to me more than they would, let's say, a church member, a high school principal, or something like that. And as for being a prepared individual, I tell people all the time, you're not paying me necessarily to make you a better shooter, which I can. You're paying me for my experiences, because there are certain things that happen before, during, and after gunfights that people need to be aware of. And then also go train at other places. Don't just go train at one place. I have my home gym for jiu-jitsu, but my coach doesn't get mad at me if I go cross train. So train, because that's how we get better as a community, because there's a lot of people out there with firearms, but the reality is the vast majority of them do not train. Thank you for stopping by, and I'll see you at the range.